Good evening, everyone, and welcome from New Canaan Library. I'm Anthony Maricola, Manager of Adult Services and Programming. I hope you're all doing well this evening. Now I'd like to welcome Professor Alex Duque. Alex Duque is an Associate Professor at Lynn University and a 3D visual effects artist. Over the past 10 years, Alex has taught various advanced courses in both the bachelorette and postgraduate degree, with a focus on the development of photorealistic 3D computer graphics, as well as visual effects. Alex's work has been published in national and worldwide advertisement campaigns for Nissan, Toyota, Renault, Ford, Energizer, Citibank, and the Atlanta Falcons, amongst many others. His experience in the visual effects and 3D computer graphics field has aided some of the most significant advertisement agencies worldwide. He has also collaborated with various paleontologists in the development of significant scientific publications through the 3D recreation of million-year-old fossils. Tonight, Professor Duque will speak about non-fungible tokens and art collecting in the digital age. Professor Duque, thank you for being with us this evening. The virtual floor is all yours.
Wow, Anthony, thank you so much for that introduction. I had to be wearing my breathing apparatus because it was intense. Anyway, so hi everybody. My name is Alex Duque, and yes, we're going to be talking about this really interesting topic. It's called NFTs. So it's been considered the word of the year. So yeah, it's fun. So I really hope that by the end of this presentation or this session, you have a better understanding of the relevance of NFTs, or they're also called NFTs. So just the relevance of NFTs in the art world, in particular in today's day and age with everything that's kind of been going on with NFTs. But before I really begin to give you an overview of a whole description of what's going to happen, I want to kind of give you a little bit of just a general introduction of what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to start with a little introduction about my background, and which is one of the reasons why for me this is like a really interesting topic. And then that in itself is going to lead into this very important concept of provenance. And once we have that understanding of provenance, then we'll start talking about, what is an NFT, like what is non-fungible. And that's going to lead into like what's cryptocurrency, and then what's blockchain, what's a smart contract, because all of those things encompass the concept of NFTs. And then from there, we're going to be able to move into just some evolution of where they came from and some examples. And then at that point, we're going to have a hopefully a good understanding of what they are. And one of the things that's really important to, if you are interested in or have a further interest in this topic, it's the concept of a digital wallet, which is necessary for NFTs. So at that point, I'll give you a little vocabulary example, which is very cool. And that's it. And then from there, some galleries that are going to kind of like pair that up, and some just final future considerations. So with that said, Anthony kind of already mentioned a lot of what I do. So I'm really appreciative of that. But yes, my name is Alex Duque. I'm an associate professor in the College of Communication at Lynn University. My specialty is visual effects and 3D animation. I've been doing this professionally for over 20 years now. And over the period of those 2 decades, I've had the privilege to work with many different advertising agencies. And he mentioned a lot of them, like Zimmerman, McCann, Rubicam, Ogilvy. And then by working for them, I've been very fortunate to collaborate in the creation of a whole bunch of projects, and animations for Nissan, for Citibank, for Pepsi, for the Boca Raton Museum of Art, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Chuck E. Cheese, like Office Depot, Dunkin' Donuts, the Atlanta Falcons most recently, the Atlanta United. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole bunch, and it's been a really fun journey. It's been well over 100 projects for national television campaigns, editorials, large print campaigns, and just a lot of stuff. And on top of that, teaching, and on top of that, some paleontology stuff, which is really cool. Some scientific discoveries I've been able to co-author by creating 3D recreations. So it's been a lot of things. And if you're curious about more about my work, you can see, you can take a look at my ArtStation or my LinkedIn or my Instagram. So there you're gonna be able to see some more work. But why am I really telling you all this, right? It's like, well, why is he talking about that? So what really happens is we kind of need to look a little bit back, with visual effects artists and CG artists, graphic designers, digital artists in general. So far, especially recently, we've been creating art, but it's usually being made for a company. It's a good example is Pixar, for example. If you're an animator for Pixar, you create this beautiful animation, which is in itself, it's fine art. You have other artists that create matte paintings, backgrounds, and those are beautiful pieces of art. But yes, that's for a company, that's a service, but we as artists, as digital artists, we also create, when we have our spare time, we create digital art for ourselves, right? I go home and I make some digital piece, and I do it because I love it and it's what I want to do. And I share it socially, on social media. I post it on different places. But it's still not quite fine art, if that makes any sense. It's art, it's digital. So, oh yeah, cool, you made an animation. Oh yeah, loop, oh cool, right? The only way that we have been able to really kind of, as digital artists, to be able to transfer our work to really kind of be considered fine art, has been to turn our work physical. Our digital work, we turn it into physical. So if you have a photographer and the photographer takes a photo, and then when they want to present at a gallery, what do? They print the photo out, and then it goes to that gallery, right? So really kind of our digital work has to be turned into physical work, to be turned into fine art, or to be considered fine art. And really, if you kind of really understand, really start thinking about that, it's because of that concept of provenance. When you're able to turn a piece into a physical piece, when you have a physical piece, at that point, you're able to establish provenance. So then the question is, what is provenance? What does that mean? What's the relevance of that? So by definition, if we look at just the definition of provenance, it's basically the history of ownership of a valued object, or a work of art, or a work of literature. So it's by establishing provenance in simple terms, by finding the origin of a piece, then we can establish authenticity of that piece. So if we do a simple example, if you think of Andy Warhol, or Pablo Picasso, or Romero Brito, or Tiffany, the provenance of their art can be verified. It can be certified. So a simple example, let's say Brito goes to a gallery, right? And in that gallery, there's going to be a curator, and the curator looks at Brito's work, and then starts asking questions about the artist, and starts asking questions about the work itself. And then the curator, takes that information, and then they start doing all of this detective work, right? And as they go and do that detective work, if they're able to, like, oh yeah, this is in fact, this piece, and this is the body of work of the artist, and this is what this artist has been doing, then they can create, or they can establish a verified proof of ownership. Or they can do a certificate of authenticity, for example, right? And more important is, his piece, let's say that this piece, just to say, will be on a gallery, right? And once it's in a gallery, then somebody, a collector probably, is going to buy that piece. And when that collector buys that piece, there's going to be a ledger that's going to be created. There's going to be a record of sale, a bill of sale that's going to be produced. And there's going to be a record, basically, of how that piece transferred from this gallery to this collector, or this other gallery, whatever, right? And if it goes from that collector to another gallery, the same thing's going to happen. And you start establishing, this bill of sale and these ledgers and so on and so forth. And as that piece moves from here to here to here, to gallery to museum to collector to gallery to museum, then there's always going to be a ledger. There's always going to be a record that allows any curator or anybody to really kind of trace, after years, right? They can be able to trace that piece back all the way to its origin. And by doing so, they can establish the provenance of the piece. But digitally, it's harder. I made this piece. This was actually a piece I made for one of the classes that I teach, and I call her Sasa. I still haven't made up a name for her, but I did this digital sculpture, right? And it lives digitally. And if I made her and then I like the work that I did, then I go in and I post it on my Instagram, for example, right? Or on my LinkedIn. And then maybe somebody likes it and somebody reshares it or retweets it, or let's just share. That person just shares it. So it goes, and I posted it, and then somebody shares it, and then somebody reshares it, and then somebody reshares it, and then somebody really liked it. And then what they did was that they downloaded it to their computer. They downloaded it to their hard drive. And maybe a couple of years later, that person that decided to download this piece, they decided to upload this and a whole bunch of other pieces, maybe into their own website, for example. They create their own little website called Cool Pieces of Artwork. And then they post this, and then they post somebody else's and somebody else's. Maybe in the process, like, let's say that there was a signature in here, that signature could have been cropped. The image could have been cropped, and then, you never see the signature. Or it could have been, Photoshop digitally altered, so there's no signature or whatever, right? So, or somebody put a banner on top of it. So there's really no, once that's posted years later, it's going to be very hard to kind of really know where that piece came from. Did it come from me? Did it come from the person that shared it? Did it came from the person that posted it, 10 years later? I mean, when they did it 10 years later, good luck trying to find out where this piece came from. So if I, as a digital artist, I'm posting my work digitally and I'm sharing my stuff on social media, for example, it's going to be very hard to establish proof of ownership. It's going to be very hard to create a certificate of authenticity. There's nothing really that is like a certificate that's unmutable. And if it moves from here to here to there, there's no ledger, there's no bill of sale, there's really nothing that allows for this piece to have any sort of provenance, really. But if I were to take little Sasa and I turned her into something physical, if I, turn her into a cast, right? Or like, for example, I actually have it here. I did a little 3D print of her in my printer. printer. So if I did that, right, if I turned her into a physical piece, then that piece can go to a gallery, that it can be presented, it can be curated, and then a certificate of authenticity can be established. And more importantly, once that piece is sold, or if it can be sold, it can be auctioned, right? Which, social media, how are you going to be able to do that? But if it does get sold, or if it gets auctioned, it's a ledger, right? It becomes part of that ledger, and it becomes, there's a bill of sale, and then all of that provenance after a while can be established back, can be traced back, and then somebody can certify, oh yeah, this is the 3D print that Alex did, back in 2020, right? So by turning my work into physical work of art, then provenance can be established, right? Now, and this is the important part here, if I were to take a little digital version of Sasa, that video or that still frame or that 3D model that lives digitally, not physically, if I'm able to turn that little piece into an NFT, or it's also called crypto art, then somehow now that little piece of art or that image or that video gets a little thing called a digital contract, a smart contract, which is a little number, which is like a one of a kind. And that piece, that little guy, that little number that gets attached to my piece it becomes part of the piece itself. So if that piece moves from here to here to here to there to there, you can trace that ID. Let's call it certificate of authenticity. You can trace that back through all of the places where it moved. So if I turn my piece into an NFT, then that happens. But other things happen as well. I can make Sasa, for example, I can make her a one of a kind, right? So I can only make one. So there's only one Sasa. And if I do that, then I'm able to create just to create the concept of scarcity. So she's scarce. There's only one. There's only one original Sasa, right? Maybe I can make her, one of 100, right? So you can also do that. I can make her part of a series. So there's only 100 Sasas, but it still creates scarcity, right? So that's something that I can do by turning her into an NFT. Now, also, because she's part of that cryptocurrency, crypto art, she can be auctioned off. She can be sold. I can sell it to somebody. Or let me rephrase that. Somebody can buy it, right? Somebody can actually buy that actual digital file, which gets the ID, goes back to the provenance. And it can also be auctioned, which is great. And there's some other things that by turning her into an NFT wouldn't happen so much in real life, or IRL, in real life. One of the things that happens is that as an NFT, then she can actually, it can be set up so that it includes royalties, and those royalties go back to the artist, which is not only a really good way to support artists, but it's also desirable for artists, which creates demand for the NFT world, right? Let's say that Brito piece that sold for 3,000, Brito gets his 3,000, but then the collector buys it, and then that collector sells it for 10. So now the collector made, but that's it. And then if he goes to from gallery to gallery, and then it gets sold for 100,000, then that's going to go for 100,000 from that gallery to that gallery. But Brito got his 3,500 bucks. So here you actually have something like a plus, right? You have that option for royalty. So every time there's a sale, it goes, a percentage of that goes back to the artist. But more importantly is that by turning that digital piece of art into an NFT, then you include a verifiable, trackable ledger. And that, which to me is the most important thing, allows for provenance to be established. So you can really see the authenticity and the tracing back of that piece back to the artist, which is what the whole point is. So, being able to say, yeah, this is in fact an Alex piece. This is in fact a Brito piece. This is in fact a Beeple's piece, and not some random person, right? So there is a verifiable, trackable way to certify that the piece does come from the artist, and therefore establishing that provenance. So in short, if I have Sasa just traditional digital art, there's no certificate of authenticity, there's nothing. But if I turn her into crypto art or an NFT, then I do get that certificate of authenticity. I do get that ID, which is the essence for the provenance to be established. So it's like, okay, yeah, that's cool and all, but what's an NFT, bro? Right? So then comes the real question. So what is an NFT? So an NFT, or by definition, is a non-fungible token. NFT acronym, non-fungible token. And that really doesn't explain anything anyway. So to really understand it, we need to think of the concept of fungibility, right? So what is fungibility? Something fungible is something that can be replaced with anything else of the same, right? So like I can take a $5 bill and I can exchange it for a $5 bill, and they're the same. They're worth the same. $5, right? I can have an iPhone and exchange it. Let's say an iPhone SE, just to say a number. I can exchange that to another iPhone SE. Right? I hope that makes sense. I can have a Porsche Carrera, and then Porsche Carrera, and I can turn that into another Porsche Carrera, but it's the same, right? It's one-to-one. They're the same thing. So it's fungible. You can exchange one thing for the same, for something else of the same. Something non-fungible is something that's a one of a kind. There's no two things alike. The best example I can think of that is if you have a son or a daughter, that's non-fungible. Your son is non-fungible. There's one of a kind. It's one. Even if you have twins or quadruplets, each one of a kind. Each one is unique. There's no two alike. It's one, period. So that's non-fungible. Another example is my iPhone. So this is my iPhone, not an iPhone. This is my iPhone. It has my apps, my backgrounds, my fingerprints, my scratches. I drink a lot of coffee and I spill coffee on my phone sometimes. Well, those things become part of this and it becomes mine. So it becomes a one of a kind. So it's no longer fungible. It becomes non-fungible, right? So it's unique. It's one of a kind, and that's what makes an NFT an NFT. It becomes unique. So then the question is, well, so how is that made unique? How is an NFT made unique? Well, so what makes an NFT unique is this really important concept of a smart contract. The smart contract is the transaction. I mean, it's more than the smart contract, but the smart contract is where NFTs live. So basically, it's this little ID. Let's just say is this little ID, and that ID is unique. Okay, that's what's important here. It's just one ID, a number, like the VIN number of a car. It's a number, but that number is unique. There's only one in the world. There are none two alike. So it just becomes one. So it basically becomes a digital signature of authenticity. So like once you have that ID, that's it. There's only one of a kind. And what's really, 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 really important here is that the artwork becomes part of that ID when you turn it into an NFT. And the ID also becomes part of the artwork. And really, they just become one in the same. You know, they coalesce into this one thing, right? So then the question is, well, okay, that's really cool, but you know, how is that ID created? You know, how does that even, you know, how does that happen? How does that get created? Well, it really gets created through the blockchain. And that kind of brings us into the next little part of what is an NFT, which is cryptocurrency. So hopefully, I don't know, hopefully you've heard the word cryptocurrency or the word blockchain being thrown around. So by definition, and this is just to kind of give you, just by definition, cryptocurrency is any form of currency that only exists digitally. It usually does not have a central issuing or regulating authority, but instead it uses a decentralized system to record those transactions and to manage the issuance of new units. And the way that it does that is it relies on this cryptography, basically, which is what allows the prevention of counterfeiting or fraudulent transactions. Okay, so it's a digital, this digital money, right? It's the simplest example of that. But to kind of really help explain it, let's think of fiat. So fiat is just regular cash. Okay, so the money that exists in real life. For example, dollars or pounds or euros, right? So just like in the real world, we have different currencies. In the crypto world, there are also different currencies. You have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, you have Litecoin, and these are just some, but there's hundreds. Just like in the real world, there's hundreds, right? There's Libras, there's yens, there's pesos, there's soles, there's different, right? Same thing in crypto, there's others. These are just some of them. So what happens in real life, just to oversimplify this process, is that in real life, if you need more money, or if a government needs more money, they print more money. Okay, I know this is a super simplification and there's repercussions to all this stuff, but just to keep it in simple terms, you need more money, you make more money, you print them, you literally print it. The way that in cryptocurrency, the way it works is to make more money, to make more coins, there's a process of solving an algorithm, right? So a computer has to solve an algorithm, and by solving that algorithm, when they're able to solve it, they're rewarded with a coin, right? So what's an algorithm, right? So then the question is, you know, so what's an algorithm? It's really simple. I mean, it's basically, I'm going to say like a super simplification of an algorithm. 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, that's a super simplification of an algorithm, but you know, in order to get 2, you need to do instruction 1, which is 1, plus then sum instruction 2, and then that gives you a result. A better explanation of an algorithm to me is making pizza. I think everybody likes pizza. So to make pizza, you have to solve an algorithm. You know, you have to do a certain set of steps in a certain order, right? Because if you do them in the right order, you don't get pizza. And then you have to do them right. And if you do those steps in the right order and you do them right, then you get a pizza. So, you know, you go and buy the ingredients and you put the ingredients, you wash them, and then you do the dough, you put the dough, and then once you have the dough, then you put the ingredients on top. you don't want to put the ingredients and then the dough, because then it would be weird. So you want to put the dough first and then the ingredients, and then you have to put all those guys in the oven, right? And that oven has to be at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, so that you get pizza, right? Because if you put it too hot for too long, pizza's going to be burnt, and then no pizza. So you have to do them in the right order. And if you do them in the right order and you do the right steps, then you solve the algorithm pizza, right? So that's basically the way that money gets created digitally. So what's kind of happening in the crypto world is that there's all of them, because this is about blockchain. So what happens is that there's all of these transactions that are happening every day. There's hundreds of thousands of transactions happening every day. Let's use Bitcoin, for example. So people are buying Bitcoin, they're selling Bitcoin, they're transferring Bitcoin. In the case of, let's say, Ethereum, which is what NFTs are mostly based off of, then there's tons of people buying NFTs, selling NFTs, buying Ethereum, selling Ethereum, transferring, right? So there's all of these transactions that are happening every day. And what really happens is that each one of those transactions, like I told you, it has a unique ID, right? So that's really important. Each one of those transactions has a unique ID. And if you actually, and what happens is that that unique ID, that transaction, has to be verified to be unique, to be a one of a kind. And if it's verified, the moment that it actually becomes verified, then that transaction becomes part of a public accessible ledger. So anybody can access that ledger and see those transactions. So if I go here, like for example, to Etherscan, you can actually see, all the transactions that happen. Let me just kind of bring it in here, right? So if I just click on it, I'm going to go to etherscan.io, and then I'm going to see all of the transactions that have happened historically. Right now, we're on the like the moment at this very moment, but you can see those transactions happen. So it's a verifiable way to see all of those transactions. So what's kind of really happening here is that there's, like I told you, there's all these transactions happening every day, and those transactions are broken up into little blocks, right? So this computer, let's say, grabs a little block because it's too many, and once this computer grabs that little block, then they start processing the information in that block, and then another computer grabs a little chunk, a little block of that, and they start processing or looking at those transactions. So this computer is looking at all of those transactions in that block, and it's checking against that public ledger and saying, hey, is this transaction a one of a kind? Is this transaction a one of a kind? Is this transaction a one of a kind? Is this transaction, meaning like, is this only one? Like there's no two alike. And that takes time. So they go through that process, and that's the process of solving that algorithm. And if they in fact confirm that all of the transactions in that little block are unique or one of a kind, which basically means they're not fraudulent, then what that computer does is that it adds that little block of transactions into the chain. And that's really where the word like blockchain, that's where that term comes from. You get a block, gets analyzed, and then it gets added to the chain, right? So that's where that whole blockchain concept comes from. So I know, Neil. So that's more or less how that, the NFTs, that's basically the essence of the NFTs. So they're basically little transactions, and those transactions are one of a kind, and they get added to that blockchain. So in the case of Ethereum particularly, the way that Ethereum came about is by adding this concept of a smart contract. It's a standard. It's called ERC 721. So basically, let's say Bitcoin for a second. So like Bitcoin, with Bitcoin, you only have a transaction. That's all you have. So like if somebody buys a Bitcoin or sells a Bitcoin or a part of the Bitcoin, doesn't matter. There's only a transaction. It is unique. It's one of a kind, but it's only a transaction. But with Ethereum, when it came out, it did this thing of a smart contract. And what they really did was being able to add more information to that transaction. So that transaction wasn't just a unique number. That transaction had some extra information that you could put in. You could put in like whatever you want. I mean, it could be like in this case, a title or a description or some attributes, for example. So this is an OpenSea creature, which OpenSea was one of the ones that kind of have been promoting NFTs for a while. But so you have a smart contract, and that smart contract has a little name. So on top of, like I said, on top of just the normal, you have some extra information. So, hey, name, this is Herbie Starbell. And description, oh, it's a friendly OpenSea creature that enjoys long swims in the ocean. And you can attach other information. So they attached an image, right? So there's a link to an image and some attributes, sleepy, happy, type of jellyfish, it has aqua power, whatever, right? So the point is that you could add extra information to that transaction. So not only you had the unique ID, but you also had some extra information to that transaction. So by creating an NFT through, in this case, it's Ethereum, then you were able to get that unique traceable ID. But because of that extra set of information, then you could link that with the artwork. So you have a unique ID. There's only one in the world, right? There are no two IDs that are exactly the same. There's just one of a kind, period. And by being linked to that image, then yes, it becomes a digital signature, a digital certificate of authenticity. And again, if that moves, then there's some extra perks to that. But again, what's really, really important here is that the artwork becomes part of that ID and that the ID becomes part of that artwork. And at the end of the day, they are one in the same, right? So on top of that, you have those extra perks. So when you have like that NFT, then you not only have that verifiable proof of ownership, you can also establish the scarcity. So there's a scarcity value attached to an NFT. It's linked, which is really important, is that it's linked to a cryptocurrency or to a blockchain. And that in itself means that there's a monetary value attached to it. And because of that, it can be sold or it can be auctioned or it can give royalties back to the artist, and it can be really anything digital or digital plus. I mean, we're going to talk about some examples later, but this is one example. So you can, let's say Sasa, right? So I say Sasa. So I put Sasa as an NFT. Somebody, let's say they buy Sasa. And when they buy Sasa, they have the ID, the smart contract ID, but there's all this other information and there's unlockable content. And then only the owner of that NFT is able to see that unlockable content. And in that unlockable content, you can say something like, hey, send me your address and I'll send you a physical version of Sasa, for example, right? So then the person, hey, send me your address to this email. So the person sends me their address to this email, and then I go in and I ship my physical version of Sasa. This is one example, right, of many. But it can also be with a venue, right? So a museum, let's say, can make, let's say, or a gallery, let's say a gallery. So a gallery will turn a piece of art into an NFT, or if it's already part of an NFT, let's say it just turns it into an NFT. So there's an NFT, and then it makes only 100 of those. And the 100 people that purchase it get unlockable content, and the unlockable content is, let's say, the ticket to enter to that gallery for that day, for that event, right? So you can attach not only something digital, but you can attach some extra information. Or maybe somebody, when they buy the NFT, hey, send me your address and I'll send you a t-shirt, right? So it can have more than that. And that's part of the power of this. But what's really, really important here is from an art standpoint is that downloading the NFT or downloading, sorry, the image of the NFT or the video, it's not the same as actually owning the NFT, which is the same, you know, with the Mona Lisa, right? So, you know, the Mona Lisa, there's only one Mona Lisa. And I can take a picture of the Mona Lisa. I can make a really good picture of the Mona Lisa, but that doesn't mean that I own the Mona Lisa. Even if you go to the Louvre, I mean, they're gonna have like all this really nice looking prints of the Mona Lisa, but they're still not the Mona Lisa, right? And you can even go outside of the Louvre and they have people that are selling the photo of the Mona Lisa, but it's not the Mona Lisa, right? So owning the NFT is one thing. Taking or downloading the photo or the video or the file is something different. And in order for that NFT to kind of stay as an NFT, it does really kind of need to live in this crypto world, and because that's where that smart contract is living. So it is important to, you know, be mindful of that. But again, you do have that unique ID. It can be in any type of digital file, you know, literally any, like a PDF, a JPEG. It can even be an executable for that matter, like a program. And you can attach extra content, right? Like, for example, sending a physical copy or an entry to an event. So there is extra information that goes attached to an NFT. So, so now that we hopefully have a bit, I hope, a good understanding of NFTs, then let's begin to look a little bit of their evolution and just some examples, right? So this whole concept really, it really kind of started in the world of Bitcoin. About 2009 is when Bitcoin was created, and people were beginning to use it, and when they were using it, you know, they started thinking, hey, you know, how can I use this more? You know, what else can I do with it? So, you know, people wanted to maybe, let's keep it a simple example. Let's say that somebody wanted to buy a house with Bitcoin, and a house would be, let's say, $100,000. So if it was $100,000, and let's just say for a second that one Bitcoin was $1 to keep it simple, then what would happen is that you would need 100,000 Bitcoin, you know, so $100,000, you need 100,000 Bitcoin, and maybe it would be a little, you know, too much to deal with as far as that. So they implemented this concept of colored coins. And basically this is about 2013 when they said, hey, look, maybe we can do some colored coins. So a colored coin can represent a group or an amount of Bitcoin. So that way you could, it's like I guess a good analogy is like, you know, a chip, like one of the, like a casino chip. So like some are less, some are more. But basically you could own, let's say, a red colored coin, just to say, and that red could represent the 100,000 Bitcoin. So it would be the value of a house or the value of a car. So instead of exchanging 100,000, you just exchange one that had that value of 100,000. It could be air miles. It could be the shares of a company, which is something that happened a lot. And those colored coins, they could be redeemed, they could be transferred, and that's the way that they were living. A simple example, for example, of this is maybe, I don't know, hopefully like you've been to an airport, and in many airports they have like this digital, like, sorry, this vending machines that sell like technology. So like a Best Buy type of vending machine. So a good practical explication of this would be, or application of this would be like, let's say I have Bitcoin, right? And it's usually going to be like on your smartphone. So I would go to that vending machine, that smart vending machine. And when I go there, the smart vending machine, you know, will have a QR code, and then I'll use my app, Bitcoin app, and I'll scan it. And then the vending machine, the smart vending machine, will say, hey, you have a pink colored coin, just say. The pink colored coin is worth $50 worth of Bitcoin. I know we have a Beats phone, a Beats headphones in here that are worth the same, $50. So we can exchange that pink coin for the Beats. And then you say, yes, transfer this for that. So it takes my pink coin and it gives me the Beats. So that's one example. And that's where it kind of started. And then it went into Ethereum. So then came Ethereum. So basically in about 2015, Ethereum, which is another blockchain, another cryptocurrency, they came out and they fully like implemented that concept of that smart contract. And what kind of happened was that, you know, people got excited about the fact that you could add other information into it. And then this little game 2 years later came about. This is where really they started exploring this smart contract capability. So about 2017, this little online game, CryptoKitties, came about. And it was really interesting because really what they wanted to do was they wanted to explore the concept. It's really important, the concept of digital scarcity. You know, what happens if something is rarer? They also wanted to see if they could attach programmable information into that smart contract. So instead of just being text, can I attach a program? So if somebody, you know, gets a CryptoKitty, something gets executed, and they wanted to kind of tie that in with the concept of breeding. You know, so hey, what happens if can somebody buy a little CryptoKitty with Ethereum, let's say for 1 Ethereum, and then buy another CryptoKitty for 1 Ethereum? And then since each one is a little program, can those two programs kind of like execute and then produce a new Ethereum coin for the person that had this too? So now you get a new Ethereum, which is, you know, the result of the breeding of the two cats. So that's what they wanted to explore. And you know, each kitty, because this is in cryptocurrency, like it had that association with a monetary value. And then they also wanted to kind of introduce that concept of auctioning. You know, can you auction a digital contract? So, you know, if you take these two little kitties and you breed them and you get this new one, and this new one is rare, right? So scarcity. So it's not the one that everybody has. This is a brand new one that's like, you know, there's only like 5 of them. Could that person auction off that little kitty? And will people be interested in auctioning, you know, into that auction? Would they actually be interested in purchasing that? So they really began to explore that concept. It's like an advanced Tamagotchi if you ever played that game. But that's basically what they started doing. And because that little kitty, like I said, like because it lives in that blockchain, there's a value associated with it. And you gotta also take into account, you know, what was the cost of Ethereum at that time? You know, back in 2017, 1 Ethereum was $300. Last year, April, 1 Ethereum was $2,000. Yesterday, 1 Ethereum was $4,400, right? So you got to take that into account. But here's a little example, just to kind of show you how that concept, right? Back in 2017, how they introduced that concept, and this is just like a practical application of that. So let's say that you bought this little kitty, this again, just say for 1 Ethereum, and then you bought this other little kitty. So this is a male, it's a female, and you bought this one for 1, and you bought this one for 1. and then you wanted, to breed them, right? So then you go, oh yeah, let me breed them. So you breed them, and then hey, select your female, select your dame. So boom, here's my dame, the one that I bought. And, oh, here's my male. So select your male. So I'll select the male that I bought. It's like, okay, let's give them some privacy and let them breed, right? And ooh, this one, yeah. So now they breed and they are gonna produce a brand new kitty. And boom, you got a brand new kitty. She's gorgeous. You discovered a brand new eye shape. That's fabulous. It's a mutation, which means that neither of your parents had that. And some traits can only be discovered through breeding. So basically, now I have a brand new kitty
Meow, meow, meow.
that, let's say, now costs, I'm going to say 5 Ethereum. So, I bought this one for 1, I bought this one for 1, and now I have this one for 5. Maybe it's not super rare, right? Maybe this one, that one, and then maybe it was like 0.1, right? We don't know. It's random, but that's the way that this worked, right? So it was like this like an advanced Tamagotchi, really. So that's what kind of like began this whole concept, and it's really interesting because people began collecting this little kitty. So they were not only playing the game, but they also were collecting. People wanted to get the cool one, just like with trading cards, for example. You want to get the good one, you get the rare one, the one that nobody has. If you play Magic the Gathering, I guess it's very similar to that as well, or Dungeons and Dragons in some cases. So so these are just some examples, just practical examples of this guy. So like this little guy is worth 100 Ethereum. Right, so it's $400,000. Now, whether it has been sold or not, I don't know, but there is that. Like then people do buy them, people do sell them, and they collect them. So there's ones that are super rare. Like this one is absurd. I mean, I don't even think anybody's gonna even have that amount of Ethereum. But regardless, right? This one you can actually see how that auctioning process is going. So. It's been going on for a year. It started very cheap, and the way as it progresses, it begins to cost more and more and more, which is part of that digital scarcity concept. So so that's kind of like where we kind of like, let's say, begin, and then after that, then it kind of began to evolve. And then you have these guys called CryptoPunks, which you've probably heard of. Is by Larva Labs. And it's basically the same concept. It's like, little trading cards. So you have all of these little CryptoPunks. I don't really like them visually, but you have all these CryptoPunks, and again, they're associated with Ethereum, with a transaction. And just to kind of give you an idea, so this little CryptoPunk here was sold for 70 Ethereum. Yeah. And there was some transfer, whatever. So you can actually see the history of these little guys. So it's the same concept. People would want them, and there's a rarity, but it started evolving into other things. And then parallel to this, you have NBA Top Shot. So NBA Top Shot by Larva Labs kind of like they kept using that concept of the collectibles, right, of the trading cards, like being able to collect something and keep it. And then like you would go into their website and sign up and whatever. But here's like, for example, Steph Curry. So this little NFT, because in this case, again, it is an NFT, right? It's only digital. Was the lowest ask was $57,000. The average sale for this guy is $26,000. The top sale was for 36. But again, just like any card, there's some stats There's the player stats, there's the highlight stats, there's all this extra information. And of course, you can actually see, because of the fact that it's an NFT, that provenance thing. So you can actually see, where it's been moving, right? So where has this been moving from, who to who to who to who, for what amount? So that's what they did. And it's actually really popular. It's like a really popular online card trading game. So as that was happening, then this other company, Jump Tokyo, or Double Jump, what they did was they continued to explore that concept. So we were talking about like trading cards, like type of trading. But then what they said is, hey, I wonder if we can make an actual game and use this same concept of NFTs into that game. So they did, and let's see if it opens. Yeah. So you basically have a role-playing game, right? So if you pair, I don't know, World of Warcraft, for example, you have, I guess to simplify, let's say Diablo or any different games. So you have loot, and you have outfits, and you have weapons. And if something is, higher stats, then you can buy that, and that makes you a better player or a stronger player, right? So they kind of introduced that concept into games. And then it kept evolving. And then with virtual reality, then Nolan Consulted kind of like began to introduce that concept of NFTs, but now in virtual reality. So you could actually go into this virtual reality space and actually take a look at digital. It's like a digital museum, if you want to call it, digital gallery, right? So you can actually go in and explore a particular NFT and see the information about it. So this is more like a digital gallery, but it's living in a virtual world, right? So instead of just being online, it is online, but instead of just being like, in a screen, it's actually something that can be navigated with VR. And here's just the same, just a little bit of a better example of that. So let's say here I go and I click on this little guy here, then I'll be able to see this is the artwork, right? This is as an NFT. There's a description, there's all this information, there's that digital ID that we were talking about, and then you can actually see it on one of the NFT galleries, in this case OpenSea, which, if you remember, was that little creature that I showed you at the beginning. Like, that's where it started, and then now it's evolved into an NFT gallery marketplace. But anyway, so you're able to see that, and then Decentraland came up, and Decentraland basically did the same concept, but it pushed it a little further. So just in case, if you ever hear the term metaverse is not Facebook. I mean, that's the name that they decided to put into it, but metaverse is a virtual reality world. That's really what it means. If you live in the metaverse, you live in a virtual reality world where you can interact with other human beings who are inside of that same virtual reality world. Let's say a virtual reality game. If you ever heard of Second Life, which was a big thing, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, that's a metaverse, right? It's that concept of just living in a virtual world and being able to meet people virtually, like Ready Player One, if you've heard of that. So anyway, so Decentraland came up and they did the same thing. So they began to use cryptocurrency so that you could trade digitally, whether your assets or land or a location. Maybe you built a house digitally and then you sold that digital house. Maybe you heard some news about that stuff at some point in time, about a guy that made a house digitally and then somebody bought it digitally for a whole bunch of money, and then they're like, no, it's not physical. So yeah, it was funny. Anyway, so then that came about. But this whole thing blew up. And this is the reason why we're having this right now, most likely, is because all of this blew up. All of that stuff was happening before Beeple. probably heard of Beeple. He's the artist that created the artwork, NFT artwork, that sold for $69 million back in February of this year. So that's really the big moment, let's say, in the NFT world. So Beeple, basically, if you don't know anything about Beeple, his name is Mike Winkleman. He's a CG artist, just like me. And for 13 years, he was posting his work every single day, right? So this is from 2007, I believe. This is guy, you know, that was just posting stuff every single day. Let me just take you to his art station. There we go. So he was posting his work every single day, not missing one day. If you know anything about 3D, 3D is something that's not quick, is very time consuming to do. And this guy was like every day, post for 13 years straight, not missing one single day. So he did get recognition, let's say, in the CG industry for doing that. But then at one point, Christie's auction house really got involved, and then they, you know, they decided to put up his work for auction, but as an NFT, as a digital file. And this is that digital file. It's much bigger, but this is the digital file that was sold. This is directly from Christie's auction house, which basically is just a collage of all of those pieces of art. It's called the first 5,000 years, or sorry, the first 5,000 days. So that's all the work that he had. And you can actually see, here he goes, $69,346,000, right? And to talk a little bit about the provenance, so you can actually see the wallet address, right? So this is the wallet address that it came from, 0x6B, and I'm just gonna go to the end here because otherwise it's too long, 23807. So that's the wallet address that it came from, or the artist, right? So if I actually go to his OpenSea account, or yeah, to his actual account, if it ever opens, there we go. There's Beeple, right? And we can look at his account, 0xC6. Oh yeah, 0xC6B, 0x6B, 3807, 3807, right? So you can actually trace, there is a verifiable way to trace this back to the artist. And if it sells or if it resells, there's, because that number is permanent, the smart contract is the actual piece, then you can actually see that piece moving from place to place to place. So he's the one that really kind of like exploded, you know, because everybody was like, oh my God, $69 million piece, digital, what? NFT, what is that? Oh my God. Ah. So yeah, now here we are talking about it. But that's really where like everything really blew up. So this is that moment in time, you know, where it became popular. And then because of that, it has continued to evolve. So you've probably heard of memes, and maybe very famous memes, like for example, Success Kid, or Overly Attached Girlfriend. Or if you're a cat lover, maybe you heard of Grumpy Cat or Nyan Cat. These are all popular, you know, culture memes. And they have a historical relevance because they have become part of the culture. And like so, what the original creators have been doing, and these are all digital files, you know, that have been shared and reshared and reshared. But so what the actual creators have done was turn that work into an NFT. So let's say Success Kid. So if I go to Foundation App, which is an online gallery for NFTs, here we go, success kit. So maybe now if you didn't associate it with the name, you probably associate the image. And then here we can see, this little guy sold for 15 Ethereum, $61,000. So now it is owned by somebody else, maybe a collector, who will either keep it for perpetuity or will probably sell it at some later point in time. I don't know. But the point is that it got created. It now became, it now has that certificate of authenticity. And now we can begin to trace that piece as it moves from place to place. Now, if you think of overly attached girlfriend, which again, maybe by visual, you'll remember her better, same thing. What did she do? Her name is Lena. So what she did was same thing, turn that into an NFT. This one actually sold for 200 Ethereum. So this is $800,000. Well, in today, because when it sold, Ethereum was less, but it sold for $800,000. What we now is considered $800,000. And we get the same thing. So we have the actual owner now of that piece, and you can actually see how the evolution of this goes. It was originally minted or created by Lena and then listed. There was a bid, lots of bids, and then final bid 200, and then it was sold on this date. So again, you have that ledger, right? You have that way to kind of establish that provenance. And then you have other, like Grumpy Cat. Now, probably that, Grumpy Cat died in 2019. But same thing. So let me go here to created, and here we go. This is the famous image of Grumpy Cat created by Grumpy Cat. And then this little guy sold for 44 Ethereum. We have the whole provenance, and then Neon Cat, which is one of the first memes actually that sold, which is this little guy here, which is a famous GIF meme. Same thing. This one actually sold for 300 Ethereum, which now is worth $1,200,829. So yeah, and it is owned by this trust. And again, we can see where this kind of goes. It was bid, and then probably was sold at some point, and then it was rebid and resold. So so then again, this is where that collecting begins to come into play. And then there's other artists. I'm kind of gonna go a little bit ahead because I know I'm running over time. We have Gavin Shapiro, who did these flamingos, which are really famous. Philip Podas, who did a collection on dead memes. And Raphael Grassetti, who is a CG artist who created God of War. And this is just current, I guess, that, his work as a CG artist is now actually being auctioned at Sotheby's. So it's awesome. So anyway, and then more recently, you've probably heard of the Bored Ape Yacht Club by Yuga Labs, and now that's kind of like where this collecting thing has starting to kind of evolve, because now there's all these celebrities that are kind of like owning Bored Apes and putting the Bored Ape image into their Twitter handles. So, like Jimmy Fallon, there it is, and you got Post Malone, and you have Von Miller, and you have Lil Baby, and the Chainsmokers, and Steph Curry. We were just talking about him, right? So there's all of this celebrities that are now like getting and kind of buying this this Bored Apes, which are NFTs, and then displaying them. It's kind of become a little bit of a status symbol, but it's also a thing where when you buy that Bored Ape, that unlockable content actually gives you access to certain things. So maybe, not that this is the case, but just to put an example, when you buy it, you get access to a Discord, which is a chat. You get a private Discord, and in that Discord, you have all of the people who have bought Bored Apes, right? So if you have all the celebrities buying Bored Apes and they're all part of that private Discord, and now you are part of that Discord, right? It gives you some status, or you can consider some status, right? So so there's pros, right? It goes back to those pros. Or maybe if you buy it, you get access to a private concert in New York, where all of the celebrities also have that same entry ticket to that concert, that private concert. So it becomes a status. So so that's, I guess, one of the more recent things. And then there's also this play per game, play to earn games, which is really famous right now, Axie Infinity. There's the tweets that have also become NFTs. With like Jack Dorsey, you probably heard his tweet that sold for $2 million. And there's other possibilities as well. You know, you have music, you have documents, it can be social media it can really social media profiles, tweets, posts. It can be video game stuff, executables, programs, apps, anything digitally can really be an NFT, which again, so then the possibilities begin to like grow and grow and grow and grow. And it's just a really interesting thing. So in order for you to be able to collect NFTs, you have to create a digital wallet. To kind of give you a quick rundown, you have different cryptocurrencies, or sorry, digital wallets. The most, for me at least, one of the most secure ones is MetaMask, and Coinbase. Coinbase is a little bit less, but it's still safe. So, you know, if you set yourself up with a MetaMask account, then you're going to be able to access all these digital galleries. And if you have yourself a Coinbase account, then you can also have all this digital galleries. One thing before I move on to this little next phase, I see a question that I just want to kind of answer. It says, once you create an NFT, is it possible to create a physical version of a piece by printing it out and create a certificate of provenance or a certificate of authenticity on that physical piece without voiding the NFT? Can you have both physical at the same? Yes, actually, that's a really good question. I was going to get to that a little bit later, but so the question is, hey, can you have something physical and digital and kind of have both worlds, the physical authenticity and the NFT authenticity? Yes. I'll give you actually, before I go into finishing into this, guys, you can, so something, I was talking about the presentation for with a friend of mine, and he's like, oh, really? You're going to be doing the presentation? That's awesome. I'm like, yeah, man. And then he's like, oh, you know what happened to me the other day? I went to an art walk. So my friend went to an art walk, and in the art walk, you know, he saw this piece of art printed. It was a print. And he loved it. I was like, I want this. It was Alice in Wonderland. It was a representation of Alice in Wonderland. He's like, I love this so much. I want this. And when he was gonna buy that print from the lady, you know, he said, oh, you know, I really like it, but it's a print. So, you know, how unique is this? Because you can continue making prints. And I want something that's just like one of a kind. I want something that's like, you know, millions of. And then the lady said, well, first of all, yes, it is a one of a kind. Second of all, I'm not going to sell you this physical piece unless you set up a digital wallet and buy the NFT. When you buy the NFT, I'll give you the physical piece. Right? So by doing so, you're getting both. In this case, it was accessed through physical, but really the purchase ended up happening digital, because on that digital, you do have that digital ledger. And then in the physical world, you're going to get a receipt for the purchase. And then you can kind of establish that provenance. So yes. And then I will continue with the next questions in a little bit, just to kind of finish this, because I know I'm running long. So I'm sorry. But anyway, so Coinbase and MetaMask. So if you don't know anything about MetaMask, I'll just kind of give you a little rundown of what it is.
This is Sam. Sam uses the internet just like the rest of us. Lots of apps she uses seem to be free, but they actually come at a cost. She knows the internet isn't very secure and strangers own her data. Credit cards are stolen, identities get hacked. She has to navigate a maze of ads just to surf the web, and she knows someone is always watching. But she's heard there's a better way. And then Sam sees it. The promise of a new internet powered by the Ethereum blockchain. An amazing combination of technologies the world is building together that are reinventing how we connect to one another. And it's just within her reach. But to access this new world, she needs the right tools. Meet MetaMask, your connection to the new web. MetaMask is the tool Sam needs to access this new world. It's a key that connects her to new types of applications. It's a wallet that keeps her data and valuables safe and sound. And it's a shield that protects her from hackers and data collectors. With MetaMask, Sam is ready to explore this new internet safely and securely. The possibilities are endless. Sam can use next-generation applications that give control back to the users and the community, own her data and move seamlessly between sites, and send money across the world at a fraction of the cost. Create new organizations with new currencies that bind her communities together. Crowdsource projects and art, or invest in other people's creations. Sound too good to be true? Well, with great freedom comes great responsibility. Sam controls her own identity on this new internet.
No more new passwords for every site she visits.
Just a secret phrase that controls her accounts. This phrase is her login, her password, and her proof of ownership all wrapped up in one.
So Sam has to keep it as safe as she possibly can.
Now that she's installed MetaMask, Sam's ready to explore the best version of the internet. Vote, crowdfund, buy stuff, publish writing, make art, hire freelancers. What will Sam do first? Whatever she wants. The internet is hers to explore. Welcome to a new kind of internet. Welcome to MetaMask.
Right, so that's the gist of it. One of the reasons why I think it's important is because I'm not really gonna go into this, but there's this concept of Web 3.0. So right now we're on Web 2.0, and there's a new concept of Web 3.0. And MetaMask actually does support that technology. So it's one of the reasons why I think it's important. Anyway, so these are other galleries that these are basically like some of the key galleries that you can explore. OpenSea.io, Super Rare, Mintable, Foundation, Nifty Gateway, or Crypto.com. All of these guys, you need a digital wallet to access. Well, crypto, not so much, but all the other ones, you do need to have a digital wallet to access so that you can, everything can move within that crypto world, right? So if you were to buy an NFT, or let's say buy an NFT, then it goes and links to your wallet. So all of that provenance can be established. So last thing I want to show you before answering all of the questions is, I just think it's cool, but you've probably seen the commercial and you've probably seen Matt Damon kind of speak. And if you haven't, I still want to show you this because it's very encouraging. Ooh. Never mind, maybe I won't show it. 1 second, technical difficulty. 1 second, guys. Okay, so here you go.
History is filled with almosts, with those who almost adventured, who almost achieved, but ultimately, for them it proved to be too much. Then there are others, the ones who embrace the moment and commit. And in these moments of truth, these men and women, these mere mortals, just like you and me, as they peer over the edge, they calm their minds and steel their nerves with 4 simple words that have been whispered by the intrepid since the time of the Romans. Fortune favors the brave.
Right, so this is the latest player in the crypto world, and I think I'm gonna end it there. That was basically the end of it. So let's so thank you. There's a little slide at the end that said thank you, but yeah, it kind of crashed, so it's fine. Thank you. I appreciate your time into taking a look at this conversation. I hope that you were able to get a good understanding of NFTs, hopefully, just what they mean and how they can be applied, especially in the world of collecting. And that's basically it. So with that said, it's I'm going to be taking some questions. I see some questions kind of popping up, so I'm going to start answering those. If you want to leave, feel free to do so. Again, thank you so much for the presentation, for taking the time to look at the presentation. So Juan, yes, so there's a really, there's a concept of NFTs that somebody bought an actual physical asset and an NFT, and then the physical asset got destroyed or lost, but the NFT remained, right? In that case, again, because they're linked, I mean, it sucks that the physical piece got destroyed or lost, but because it was NFT'd and because there is that concept of it living in perpetuity, then that little NFT still lives and is going to continue to live for perpetuity until the technology falls down or whatever. But yeah, it'll continue. Actually, something that I read recently is that museum, I don't remember which museum, but it is NFTing some of Da Vinci's pieces, some of his artwork. So in part for the concept of perpetuity, but also because at that moment, then you have that piece, you know, just living in both worlds. And because the NFT is attached to a cryptocurrency, whether it is Ethereum or Cardano, which is a different, there's all these different cryptocurrencies, but let's say Ethereum, which is the most common one. As long as that cryptocurrency value continues to increase, the cost of that, whatever it was, is going to also continue to increase. But of course, if that cryptocurrency decreases, then the cost of that is going to decrease. So let's just say Ethereum. Right now, the big thing is Ethereum. If tomorrow another coin comes along, another cryptocurrency comes along, and it just completely destroys everybody because it's just so much better, then what's going to happen is that people are going to start using that one instead of this one. So the value will probably stay or go down. So it's interesting. Yeah. I hope that answered that question. Another question is, couldn't the original artist keep the original NFT on an external hard drive? I was gonna move my hard drive when my presentation closed because I was gonna answer your question. But yeah, as an artist, you actually have all of that original artwork, right? You know, whether it is your sketches, your drawings, your backup files, your original creation files. So yeah, you'll actually have a copy of that stuff, which is also good. In the case of a curator establishing provenance, they'll go into and look for those original files. You know, hey, where's your original concept? Where's your drawing, your rough sketch of that, which is also important to help establish, you know, the originality of the artwork. So yes, the original artist can keep and should keep the original information in their hard drive. Does the artist receive royalties every time the artwork is sold or resold? If the artist decides to do so, yes. If the artist decides not to do so, then no. It depends. Some platforms would allow for it. Some platforms may not allow for it. So it also depends on the platform where the NFTs are sold, like the gallery, right? So OpenSea by default gives the artist 10%. But other galleries, you can establish less or more than that. So the other question by Christina. Hello, what a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. Do you need a crypto wallet to sell NFT artwork? Yes, you do. You need to literally have one. That's why I showed you that MetaMask. If not, Coinbase would be the other one, but you do need one because everything is going to move in that world. So you need to have one. This is the only way it's going to work. Oh, right. So you know what? I'm gonna open up. Thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna open up my presentation again. Because there is the concept of gas fees. It's not in here, but the definition of it is. So gas fees, let me come over here. Gas fees are, and I'm going to get to this little guy in a second. So gas fees is the cost, it's measured in weight. So first of all, gas fees are measured in weight. So like here, somewhere in here, I have it. Gas is measured in weight. What it is the cost or the fee of transferring or creating / minting artwork, right? So in essence, what it is if you make an NFT, a computer is going to have to process information to solve that algorithm, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to cost electricity, and that electricity is going to transfer into a cost, and that's where the gas fees come in. Thank you for actually reminding me, because that's part of this future considerations that I didn't get to. So I'll get to that. I'll answer some questions and get to that. Can NFTs make sure the digital version of a piece doesn't infringe of an original copyright or a physical piece? My God, yes. See, that's what happens when you miss a slide. So yes, the ethical and legal implications are an interesting thing. Right now, it is almost like a free-for-all. It has been starting to get sorted out, but you know, taking somebody else's work and calling it your own and monetizing is illegal. It's just not. It's just copyright infringement or intellectual property rather. But then there's the question: hey, taking somebody else's work A and somebody else's work B and putting them together and calling that thing your own, is that really yours? I mean, this is the same concept of mixing, you know, back in the day. You know, is that their sampling, is that really legal? So then there's that question, you know, how much of that can you do? The best thing, just as a suggestion, and this is my particular point of view, I'm a little bit more of a purist when it comes to art, is it should all be yours. It should be 100% yours. Your design, your concept, your vision, your creation, your labor, yours. It has to be yours. That's my particular point of view. And then there's the other question that has to do with this. If a photo has been shared on social media, how do you verify who the actual owner of that is? Like the memes, right? So that's tricky. And a better example of that is there's this guy who does Tom Cruise. What's the name of that? Tom Cruise deep fake. So deep fake is a technology that developed where you can actually do this replacement of a face, right? So I'll just kind of show you a little video here since it's right there. Hopefully there's no commercials gonna play.
Oh, what's up? Oh, what's up? It's a little embarrassing, you know. It reminds me, I was once in Russia, I ran into Gorbachev. He said, you know, Mr. Movie Star, are you nervous? I said, no, Mr. Gorbachev.
Right. So point of the story is that you can do a deep fake, and then so hey, is that really yours? Or if I take a photo of someone famous and I post it as an NFT, then well, hey, there is actually a release that should have been signed by that person, and if there's no release, then they're entitled to the money. The moment that there's a value attached to that art piece, that's when things begin to become complicated, because now there's money involved and there's value involved, and then yeah, so it's tricky. So another question: would an NFT, to say the Mona Lisa, for example, infringe on the provenance of the Louvre, who owns the physical piece? So if the Louvre, let's say, is the owner, if they create that NFT themselves, then there's no infringement, right? Because they're creating it. So the owner of the piece is creating it, and because there is provenance pre-NFT, there is a way to verify, you know, that this is the actual owner, and so on and so forth. But yeah, there's some cases where it gets complicated. But yeah, there's a lot of gray area and special cases. So the next question, I hope that answered that question. Is Ethereum the only cryptocurrency right now that works with NFTs? Again, so that's what happens when the slides crash. There are other cryptocurrencies. There's other blockchains that support the NFT technology. You have Cardano, you have Polygon, you have Tether, you have Solana. There's other ones, but these are the key ones. And yeah, so let me kind of go back here just to finalize. Vocabulary. So now that we've talked about all this stuff, let me go here to slideshow, play from current. So when you hear, oh my God, No SAS just dropped a recently minted Bored Ape Nifty on Basie, man. I think it's like 0.8 ETH. You should stop playing Axie, bro. Get on the Discord and see what's going on. Yo, make sure you get MetaMask. So hopefully at this point, many of this stuff you will actually like understand, as absurd as it sounds. But so we have pseudonyms like No SAS or Beeple, right? Or a coffee stain. You have Nifties. So whenever somebody says Nifties, it's just another way of saying NFTs. Basie or Bored Ape Yacht Club are the ones that we talked about before, which is similar to the Mutant Ape Yacht Club. So Shaquille O'Neal owns a Mutant Ape, which is, so it's basically the same thing, which is very similar to CryptoPunks. So yes, so Basie is basically the same as any of those. Whenever you hear the word drop or the term drop, there was a drop, it's an announcement of a recently minted NFT. And then minting, it's turning a digital something into an NFT. If somebody says ETH or Ethereum, now you know what that is. It's a cryptocurrency or a blockchain. Axie is a game, that's a play to earn. Discord is a platform for chatting, which is highly used today. I actually use Discord as well. It's really cool. So if you think of MSN Messenger back in the day or Facebook chat, it's the same thing. MetaMask is the wallet. It's one of the crypto wallets that we talked about. Gas is the cost for transferring or minting NFTs. Gwei is the smallest unit of Ethereum. It's like the cent is to the dollar, so like cents are to the dollar. A smart contract address is the unique ID number that is linked to a crypto transaction. And then there's the other cryptocurrencies like Cardano, Polygon, Tether, and Solana, which are some of the more prevalent ones. One thing that's actually important here is, there's this environmental climate implication. Minting an NFT and everything that's happening on with NFTs, it does take processing power. And that processing power transfers into energy consumption. So then, you know, with global warming and all of these elements are happening, then that becomes an important consideration. So one thing that Ethereum is trying to do is actually coming up with Ethereum 2.0, which will reduce that footprint. You reduce the amount of processing so that it doesn't consume so much energy. And Cardano is one of the cryptocurrencies that is actually taking some actions into that. So it's trying to really just not have such a strong energy footprint. But there is that as well. So with that, now I can actually finish with thank you. So thank you. So there's one more question here. Would the NFT of the Mona Lisa be valued independently? Would the NFT of the Mona Lisa be valued independently? Up to the creator, honestly. You know, if they decide to do it, they can. I mean, they can. Let's just say, for example, so like I'm going to use me as an example, right? So I can create an NFT of an art piece that I made, and then that piece, I can give it a value or I can give it no value. I can say 0, but nobody can own it. Only I can own it. So I can do it just for the sake of provenance, so that it just exists and it's just taken care of, so that there's that process, that perpetuity. But it doesn't have to necessarily be sold or transferred. I can, again, put it a value of 0, or I put it a value of $100 billion. It doesn't really matter. I can choose to transfer it to somebody or something, or a organization or whatever, if I choose to. And then it can get transferred back to me, right? So there's that. It doesn't have to necessarily be sold. It can, and it can be auctioned, but it doesn't necessarily have to. It can just be done for the sake of perpetuity, or for the sake of kind of creating that initial point, right, where something or a legitimate foundation or a legitimate organization or museum can actually create those elements, to those NFTs of actual artwork for the future. Because at the end of the day, I was, in my opinion, everything now is digital. Like what happened 100 years ago, there were no computers, so everything was physical, and all the artwork that we have is physical, and that's why we consider fine art. But that it's physical not because somebody chose to make it physical. It was just the only way that was possible. Now with digital, then there's like another medium, and now everybody's really using that medium just because technology and the world, and here we are on Zoom. I'm not giving this presentation physically, I'm doing it digitally, and you're all here digitally. So just because of the medium and the way that it's working, things are going into this digital world. So it's important that things begin to kind of have some form of establishment of authenticity, particularly, being able to have something be traced back to the owner, regardless of value. I think it's important. And today it's NFTs. Tomorrow is going to be a new technology, an emergence, a development, a version up of whatever is happening right now. But regardless of that, it's still going to happen in that digital world. I mean, in my opinion, I was talking with Anthony about this just before the presentation. For me, I think that the virtual reality world is going to start taking a big impact. So the attendees in this presentation, I don't know how many of you guys are still here, but the ones that are here, like, you can, in the future, the presentation is some virtual reality, right? So you can sit on your chair, but you feel surrounded, so you actually feel in another location that's not your house. And then in that beautiful room that you're sitting in, you can look to your right, look to your left, and you'll actually see other people, digital people, sitting there, but each one of those is actually a person in their house. And then I'm going to be, let's say, in a podium talking, and you're going to see me talking, and this presentation that you're seeing, you're going to see it on a big screen behind me, but because it's immersive, you'll feel there. So it's I think, that will begin to take hold, and then the technology will evolve into that. So yeah. But anyway, I know I took too long, to 1 hour too long, but thank you again. And I don't know if there's any other questions, but if there's not, then I really appreciate your time, and thank you.
Professor Duque, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation and spending the evening with us. You gave us a lot of clarity on a very complicated concept, and we really appreciate it. I wish you and all of our viewers a wonderful rest of night, and thank you again for being with us.
Thank you. See you.
Good night.